Plot summary of Breath, Eyes, Memory by Edwidge Danticat. In part 1 of the book, Sophie Kako, who has lived with her mother's sister, Tante Tai, for the first 12 years of her life in the Haitian village of Croix-de-Rosettes, is suddenly called to New York to join her mother, Martine, in Brooklyn. Sophie doesn't like that she has to leave Haiti, even though violence is getting worse in both the cities and the countryside, and even though Tante Tai seems to struggle more and more each day with her unrequited love for Monsieur Augustin, Sophie's teacher. People tell Sophie that a daughter belongs with her mother, but Sophie feels more like Tante Tai's child. She even has nightmares in which her mother, whose face she only knows from pictures around the house, tries to take her away or hurt her. Sophie makes Tante Tai a Mother's Day card with a dried daffodil attached to the edge, but no matter how many times she tries to give it to her, Tante Tai says it should be for Sophie's real mother. Sophie leaves Haiti on the day that Tante Tai takes her to the airport, where a violent protest is happening. Sophie is sitting next to a very upset little boy on the plane. The boy's trace corrupt father was just killed outside the airport during the protests. Sophie gets to Brooklyn after falling asleep in the middle of all the chaos on the plane. Martine is happy to see her, but Sophie looks like she's going to pass out from shock. Sophie learns that her mother, Martine, has horrible night terrors and violent visions because she was raped when she was a teenager, which led to Sophie's birth. As Sophie gets used to her mother's dreary apartment in a rough but lively neighborhood, she also learns that Martine has terrible night terrors and violent visions because of that rape. Sophie meets Mark, who is the boyfriend of her mother, and gets nervous about starting school. As the school year is about to start, Martine asks Sophie if she is a good girl, which means if she has a boyfriend. She then tells Sophie a dark story about how, when Martine and Tante Tai were young girls, Sophie's grandmie Aoife would often put her fingers inside them to test their virginity. In part 2, Sophie, who is now 18, moves with her mother to a house in a different part of Brooklyn. Martine, who is a nurse, works awfully long hours at 2 different jobs. This means that Sophie, who is about to go to college, is often on her own. Sophie and Joseph, a musician who lives next door, become friends. Joseph is the same age as Martine, but there is a clear tension between him and Sophie. Soon, Sophie starts letting Joseph take her out to jazz clubs and bars at night. Sophie brings up the idea of having a boyfriend with her mother. Martine's reaction tells Sophie that she will never be able to date as long as she lives with her mother, even though Joseph says he loves her and wants to marry her. Sophie comes home late one night after spending the evening with Joseph. Her mother is waiting for her. Martine tells Sophie that she knows about Joseph. She then drags Sophie upstairs and tests her with violence, just like Grandmie Aoife did with Martine and Tante Tai. Sophie doubles, or breaks apart, during the test, but she doesn't tell Joseph what's going on. Joseph tells Sophie that he is leaving New York to live full-time in Providence, Rhode Island, and asks her to marry him one last time. Sophie turns him down, but when she gets back home, she is sad, lonely, and misses Joseph a lot. Sophie takes a pestle from the kitchen up to her room and sticks it in her vagina while her mother is out on a date with Mark. She cuts herself and breaks her hymen, which, by Martine's standards, means she is no longer virgin. When Martine gets back to her house and tests Sophie, she thinks that Sophie has been with a man. She gets so angry that she kicks Sophie out of the house. Sophie hobbles next door and tells Joseph she is ready to get married. In part 3, Sophie, who now has a baby girl named Bridget, decides to go to Haiti on the spot in the middle of August. She has gone back to her grandmother's village of La Nouvelle Dame Marie to get in touch with her roots, find out more about her past, and get away from her marriage to Joseph, which is having trouble because Sophie feels so much pain and disgust around sexuality. Sophie sees her grandmother and aunt again. In Sophie's absence, Tante Tai has become close with a local woman named Louise, a merchant who wants to sell her prize pig for money to pay for a ticket to America. This could be a romantic relationship. Sophie doesn't tell her grandmother or aunt right away why she's there, but when Grandmie Aoife asks her about her marriage, Sophie says she's having trouble and that the tests her mother made her do have ruined her life. Sophie asks Grandma Aoife why moms still put their daughters through tests. Grandma Aoife says that all mothers want their daughters to be safe, pure, and happy. She also says she's sorry for the pain she's caused Sophie by continuing to test her. Soon, Grandma Aoife receives a cassette tape from Martine. Martine, who hasn't talked to Sophie in years, says on the tape that Joseph called her in a panic, asking for Sophie. Grandma Aoife makes a cassette for Martine that tells her where Sophie is and sends it back to her. A few days later, Martine goes to Haiti, where she hopes to see not only her mom and sister, but also Sophie. Sophie sees her family members breaking down. Tante Tai and Grandma Aoife are always fighting because Tante Tai wants to spend more and more time drinking with Louise, which makes Grandma Aoife angry. At night, Martine comes into Sophie's room to cry over Bridget's sleeping body. Grandma Aoife buys Louise's pig in order to get Louise to leave Haiti. This is a betrayal of Tante Tai. Along with this family conflict, the violence in La Nouvelle Dame Marie gets worse when the lawless paramilitary Tonton Macuts kill a beloved villager. One of the Tonton Macuts raped Martine years ago. Sophie realizes that she has to leave Haiti and go back to the United States with her mother. In Part 4, Sophie and Martine go back to New York together. They decide to start over with their relationship and tell each other the truth about everything. Sophie spends the night at Martine's apartment before going back to her own home in Providence. Sophie says she has an eating disorder, and Martine says she is pregnant. Sophie is shocked to find out that her mother has been sleeping with Mark for years, and her mother tells her she should get married. Martine, on the other hand, says she's not even sure she's going to have the baby. She's seriously thinking about having an abortion. Sophie tells her mother not to make any hasty decisions, and she goes back to Providence, promising to see Bridget and Joseph the next weekend. Sophie goes back to Rhode Island and meets with her sexual phobia support group and therapist, Rena. Rena tells Sophie how to deal with the news that her mother is pregnant. Rena says that both Sophie and Martine's ideas about love, sex, and getting pregnant have been messed up by the sexual violence they've experienced throughout their lives. She tells Sophie that the only way for either of them to heal is to face their shared and separate traumas. Martine tells Sophie that she plans to have an abortion after a trip to Brooklyn. She says the fetus inside her is evil and has been talking to her in a man's voice. Sophie worries about her mother, but she doesn't try to stop her from getting the surgery. Instead, she just asks Martine to call her when it's over. Sophie goes to therapy every week, but one afternoon she comes home to find a message from Mark on the answering machine telling her to call him. When Sophie talks to Mark, he tells her that Martine has killed herself and the baby she is carrying by stabbing herself 17 times in the stomach. Sophie is so sad that she immediately packs and heads to Brooklyn. She and Mark then take a plane to Haiti to bring Martine's body home. Back in La Nouvelle Dame Marie, Grandma Aoife says she knew Martine was pregnant and dead before she heard about either. She and her Aunt Atai are sad about Martine's death along with Mark and Sophie. Sophie runs away from the funeral of her mother because she is too sad. She goes into a cane field, which is similar to the one where her mother was raped when she was a teenager. She thinks about how the women of Haiti have been shaped by generations of pain and trauma. Their pain has almost broken them, but it has also made them stronger. Sophie finally realizes that she can be free of her problems without giving up her family or her past. In a rare moment of weakness, she lets Grandma Aoife comfort her.
About the author. Edwidge Danticat was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Her aunt and uncle raised her for a few years while her parents, Andre and Rose, moved to New York to start a new life for their family. At age 12, Danticat moved to Brooklyn, just like Sophie in Breath, Eyes, Memory. To deal with the teasing and bullying she faced at school, she wrote about her trip to New York and her childhood in Haiti for magazines that published teen writing. Danticat went to high school in Crown Heights and graduated from Clara Barton. She then went to Barnard College to study French literature. She went to Brown University to take part in the prestigious and experimental Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing program. After she graduated in 1993, she rewrote her master's thesis into Breath, Eyes, Memory, which was her first book. Published to both praise and criticism, the book was chosen by Oprah's book club in 1998, which brought Danticat to the forefront of the literary world. Danticat has taught creative writing at NYU and the University of Miami. Her work has been published in The New Yorker and Harper's, and she has been nominated for the National Book Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award. She has also won a Genius Grant from MacArthur. Danticat has written more than 15 works of fiction, memoir, and books for children. Her newest book, Everything Inside, came out in 2019.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.